Baltimore's battle over the Inspector General's access to city documents continues today with a release statement from the OIG, firing back at Mayor Brandon Scott.
The city's watchdog says Mayor Brandon Scott's plan is not about accountability, but rather about control. The mayor is proposing a four-pronged plan he argues is a way to restore trust with the public.
The mayor doesn't want something to come out. It's a waste of money. It's a waste of everyone's time. But I think everyone is probably thinking about similar reasons, that there's maybe something to hide.
We are back in Baltimore. So the Office of Inspector General has been investigating this mayor on that Mosey program. It's called the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement. And then also there's a program called Sidestep. So right in the middle of this investigation, Mayor Brandon Scott decides to cut off access to records. Then he wants to propose a plan to overhaul the entire OIG infrastructure. The OIG calls him out, and then he gets on the radio to defend his ridiculous position. Obviously, spoiler alert, it didn't end well. Let's get into it.
As the showdown continues between Mayor Brandon Scott and the Office of Inspector General over access to records. And now the city's watchdog says Mayor Brandon Scott's plan is not about accountability, but rather about control.
Shout out to Fox 45 Baltimore for this story. But what we're talking about here, not about accountability, this is about control. And obviously, this is not me saying this. That's the Office of the Inspector General. This is the independent watchdog that Baltimore City voters created and then strengthened twice through charter amendments back in 2018 and 2022. So the people of Baltimore went to the ballot box and said, we want this office to be independent. We want it to be protected. And now the mayor is proposing to restructure it while actively investigating his office. How does that look? I mean, let's be honest. How does that look optically? Like, he really cares about how he is seen, but this doesn't make any sense. So here's what his plan actually will do. He wants to hire a outside firm. It'll be a private forensic auditor that's going to come in and review the Mosey program and Sidestep, the two exact things that the OIG is already investigating. So you got an independent watchdog who answers to the voters, and you're trying to replace it with the firm that's going to answer to the mayor, and he's calling that accountability. So think about that for a second. If you are under investigation and you pick who investigates you, is that accountability or is that control? It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. What it looks like is he knows that whatever the investigation is going to come out from the OIG is not going to make him look good. So he's trying to cut this off as fast as possible, and he wants to control their narrative. Let's keep going.
It's a waste of money. It's a waste of everyone's time. It just further undermines the value of the work of the IG's office.
And I think for a lot of people, the question is, why is this happening now when this access has been in place for years and the mayor has been in office for years?
So that's Councilman Mark Conway. And notice he is a black man who supports the OIG. So maybe this isn't about race, even though the mayor and his team believe that, my thumbnail was racist, but we'll talk about that a little bit more later. But he's asking the exact same question. Why now? The OIG had access to city records for years, multiple administrations with no issues. The law never changed.
The question is, why is this happening now when this access has been in place for years and the mayor has been in office for years?
I'm not entirely sure, but I think everyone is probably thinking about similar reasons, that there's maybe something to hide.
The mayor's team points to the Maryland Public Information Act, or MPIA, as the reason why records need to be shielded. But the law never changed. The OIG statement says the mayor's position is based on his interpretation of the law.
The Maryland Public Information Act never changed. The only thing that changed is what they started looking at. And what they started looking at was the Mosey program and Sidestep programs that run directly out of Brandon Scott's office. And now suddenly the process is wrong. The access is wrong. Everything is wrong. And the solution is, let me hire my own investigator because that makes sense. And Conway is calling it what it is. It's a waste of taxpayer money money to do a job that an independent office already exists to do the job. Baltimore is not a rich city. The budget is tight. And this mayor now wants to spend city dollars on a private firm that runs a parallel investigation that he controls while simultaneously blocking an independent watchdog who don't answer to him. That's not fiscal responsibility. That's burying yourself in a friendlier investigation. Also, before we even talk about his response to all this, the man is taking himself and his aides to Vegas. Yes, Vegas.
Delegation from Baltimore City will soon head to Las Vegas with aims to secure a development deal. The cost, thousands of dollars to taxpayers.
Well, it is difficult to determine exactly how many city officials will be jetting to Las Vegas this weekend because many of them are late filing their travel reports. At City Hall, they're packing their bags, preparing for a 2,400-mile excursion to Las Vegas. City leaders call it a business trip, but taxpayer advocate David Williams calls it something else.
It's a junket. Let's call for what it is. It's a junket.
The mayor's former chief of staff is charging more than $4,000 for his 3-day stay. And another former chief of staff left today for the conference, which begins on Monday, telling the BOE that he needs to attend pre-conference meetings. Last year, city leaders charged more than $30,000 for their Vegas trip.
The question is, why is this happening now when this access has been in place for years and the mayor has been in office for years?
I'm not entirely sure, but I think everyone is probably thinking about similar reasons, that there's maybe something to hide.
The mayor's team points to the Maryland Public Information Act, or MPIA, as the reason why records need to be shielded. But the law never changed. The OIG statement says the mayor's position is based on his interpretation of the law.
Councilman Conway said that on camera about a sitting mayor, and he's not wrong. Look, I've been covering Brandon Scott for a while now. This channel was already cited by the Baltimore's Inspector General in connection with our coverage of his administration. So we know this territory, and what I can tell you, there is a pattern here that's not really new. When powerful people start restricting access to records, restructuring oversight, and bringing in their own investigators, that is not the behavior of someone who has nothing to hide. That is the behavior of someone who is trying to control the narrative before something comes out. And here's the thing about the AG's opinion he's hiding behind. The Maryland Public Information Act was never changed. The law is the same law and it always was. Scott went and got an interpretation from an attorney general letter that gave him the legal cover to restrict access. He didn't find the law. He went and built himself a shield around it. So after all this came out, Brandon Scott went on to a Baltimore radio station to defend himself. And we're going to walk through some of the moments in this interview because this is where his defense completely falls apart.
I do have to ask you this because it just sounded like this yesterday in the presentation of these proposals, that somehow that the citizens or people have lost trust or believe that there's unfairness in the Inspector General's office. There's been 8 years that this Inspector General's office has been operating the way that it has. And Mr. Mayor, I have to tell you, if you took a poll, and I'm pretty good at this, you're not going to find many people that don't have faith in that office.
Well, I hear you, C4, but you know what? But what I'll say is this. If you took a poll and asked people, should everyone have to follow the law, they will. The reality is that what we found, right? We did not know. People did not know that some of the way that they were operating was illegal. They were accessing lawyers' files that they shouldn't. I have a duty to make sure that everyone follows the law.
So what he's saying, at least, and let me know if I'm wrong, he is accusing the Inspector General of illegally accessing attorney files. Now, he said this on this show. He didn't provide any documentation, no details, no receipts, because that is a serious allegation. Isabel Cumming has been the Inspector General in Baltimore since 2018, and the mayor of Baltimore just went on a morning radio show and said that her office was doing illegal things, accessing files they shouldn't have without a single document, a single number, anything to back up what the hell he's saying. But that's the playbook if you know him. When you can't defend the policy, you need to attack the person. Make the watchdog look rogue, make the watchdog look racist, make the investigation look dirty. So when something comes out of it, you already poisoned the well, people may not believe her. But notice what he didn't say. He didn't say, here's this specific thing, this detailed file. He didn't say, here's the case. He said people did not know. It's very vague, unverifiable, but there's a plan to his nonsense. If the Inspector General's office was accessing files illegally, that is a criminal matter. You need to file a complaint, you need to go to court. Don't drop it on a radio show and then hide behind your lawyers when someone asks for the update on the audit. doesn't make a lot of sense here.
Are you concerned at all about that perception of what people feel?
No, I don't care, because the reality is right and wrong is wrong. If I was worried about perception, we wouldn't have the violence prevention plan that we had, because you guys I remember the days when Brian and C4 were the only ones that understood why we were operating the way we were operating, and everyone else was saying that we need to go back to zero tolerance. But look at where we are now, right?
Right is right and wrong is wrong. While simultaneously refused to give an update on the audit, he needs to consult with his legal team first. If right is right and wrong is wrong, give people the update. Let the audit speak for itself. Let the firm that you hired show their findings and let it be public. Let the OIG back in to do her job that the voters voted her for. But he won't, because right is right only applies when he is the one defining what right is. And I want to point something else out as well. He brought up the violent prevention plan as his shield. Look how far Baltimore has come on crime. And let's be real, 4 homicides in April is a historic low. I'm not going to take that away from him, even though I think across the country, violence is actually down. You can check the numbers yourself. Everywhere, there's less murders, there's less crime. But let's move on. Accountability doesn't have an exemption for good stats. You can reduce crime and still be misusing taxpayer money. Both of those things can be true at the same time. That's literally what the OIG is there to find out, and he's trying to block her.
All 4 of the inspector generals with legal language, I looked at it, with legal language that would have separated them from the Maryland Public Information Act. And we had the President and Senate, so I'm putting this on you, Mr. Mayor. We had President and Senator Bill Ferguson on, and they refused to move the bill. So we did have a bill. We had a bill.
So let me get this straight. There was a bill, a real bill drafted by all 4 inspector generals in Maryland with the legal language that would have separated OIG from the MPIA and given the watchdog a clear legal framework for accessing records. The right way, the legislative way, the transparent way. And it died. Senate President Ferguson wouldn't move it. Now, where was Brandon Scott during this session? Because the host asked him exactly in this interview and he couldn't give him a clear answer. If this was really about fixing a broken process for every inspector general in Maryland and every administration going forward, why wasn't he loud about that bill? Why wasn't he on the phone with the Senate president from his own city pushing it through? Instead, the bill dies quietly. And then months later, the OIG starts digging into his program and suddenly Brandon Scott has this plan. And with a AG opinion and a private forensic firm and a proposed charter changes all ready to go. He had a legitimate path. He let it die. Then he built his own path. So I want to talk about the thumbnail situation that, in case you guys may not know, because while all this is going on, while Brandon Scott is on the radio calling the critics corrupt and restricting the watchdog's access to records, someone in his circle decided that my thumbnail was a problem, a thumbnail from his channel. And obviously I'm not going to dive too deep into it because I already made a video about this, but I want to talk about this. I want to say this. Only someone who is camped and monitoring this channel thought a thumbnail was a real issue here. And while the inspector general is being blocked for doing her job, they're worried about what's on my screen. And that tells you a lot about what their priorities are. And then there's the IG herself addressing that she tried to apologize. And she said she didn't want to be a distraction. And I understand why she did that. Politics is politics. She's a Democrat operating in a Democratic city, fighting a Democrat mayor. She's not black, and she's just trying to survive this. And making this racist AI thumbnail instead of investigating is exactly the kind of distraction that her opponents want. So I'll say this. When you're right, you don't need to apologize. The minute you do, they will use it. They will frame you as the aggressor. They'll make the process look dirty. And suddenly the story isn't about the records. It's about a thumbnail. She did what she had to do. I get it. But the principle stands. Don't apologize for doing your job. So here's where it all comes down to. The radio host asked for this. The councilman asked for this. Fox 45 asked for this. And nobody got a real answer. Why now? The law didn't change. The OIG didn't change. The access didn't change. The only thing that changed is what the inspector general started to look at. And when they started to look at the Mosey program and sidestep, the programs that run right out of the mayor's office, Baltimore voters put the watchdog in place twice. And right now, the watchdog is being defunded, restructured, and replaced with an investigator the mayor hired himself. What do you think is going on here? I think it's pretty obvious. But let me know what you guys think about this in the comments below. Thank you for taking time to watch this video, and I'll see you guys in the next video.